I'd like to call the January 16th meeting of Boone County Board to order at 6:34 p.m. We will start the meeting with the pledge. We'd rise for the pledge, and then we'll have a seat for invocation by Dan Pope from Open Bible Church.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'd like to invite Pastor Dan Pope of Open Bible Church to come up and give us some words of wisdom and an invocation. I know we've got a few things on the agenda, so I did ask him to try and keep it down to at least 3 hours. So we'll see how he does.
And I told him I would do my best. So we'll keep it short for you tonight. It's such a privilege to be here. My name, as was announced, is Dan Pope. I'm from the Open Bible Church here in Belvidere. I've been here about 8 years, grown to really love the community, the county. A couple of people here I serve on the Salvation Army Board with. And one thing about our church that we really want to serve. Jesus himself said what? He didn't come to be served, but to serve. And so we try and do as much as we can in the community. And we've done everything from partnering with the Park District to do a special needs egg hunt. This summer, our youth, if you were at the Paint on State, they were the ones that were hauling the coolers behind them with ice pops in them. And it's always hot, it seems like, on Paint on State. So they did that. And also this summer, if you're ever in Big Thunder Park and you notice the gazebo and it was kind of falling apart, and so we took it upon ourselves. We talked to the sheriff and said, can we do something in the park? Can we fix up the gazebo, paint it, do a new sign? If you drive by there, you'll see a new sign, and just kind of clean it up, because that's what our heart is to give back to the community. Not to get anything from them, but just to serve them. And I got a couple of people with me tonight from my church, Janet Paulson, many of you might know, and Jill and Mike Sullivan. They did a lot of the heading up of that work there. And so that's just our heart, and that's the heart of this community, is giving back and really taking care of each other. And that's why I've grown to love Belvidere and Boone County so much. Would you bow in prayer this evening? Lord Jesus, we thank you for this community. We thank you for each one of these leaders who you have called to serve. Father, I pray that you will continually give them wisdom and guidance and favor and insight. I pray, Jesus, as they govern, they will continue to govern well, because it is in their hearts to make Boone County and Belvidere the best place possible to live. Father, we just pray that you will continue to bless our community, that you will bring businesses into this place, that you, Father, will continue to bring us together as a community to serve and to love one another and to watch out for one another, because that is so important in this time, in this day, when it seems to be the opposite. So bless this evening, bless this meeting. In your name, amen.
Pastor Pope, thank you so much for all you and your congregation do with our community, and thank you for blessing us with that invocation. Roll call, please.
Carl Johnson.
Here.
Sherry Bartell.
Here.
Jeff Carlisle.
Here.
Denny Ellingson.
Here.
Sherry Gieske.
Yeah, here.
Carl Larson.
Here.
Ray Larson.
Here.
Jessica Mueller.
Here.
Marshall Newhouse.
Here.
Bernard O'Malley.
Here.
Brad Stark. Kathy Ward.
Here.
Next up, I have recognition. Sheriff Ernest. Now, the sheriff promised to be brief tonight. We all know that once he gets a microphone, it may be forever. Sheriff, I'm going to pause you for a moment. I looked at my my sheet without my glasses on, so can you hold that just a moment? Yeah, sure.
He skipped ahead in the agenda, is my guess.
I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse, second by Ms. Geeske. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'd also ask for a motion to approve the December 19th County Board minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Geeske, seconded by Mr. Larson, Mr. Carl Larson. Any discussion? Ms. Geeske.
I think one thing that needs to be corrected, Sherry Branson was not in fact in attendance, but Sherry Bartell was.
Ah, nice catch. Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sheriff, since you're already up there, I'll just let you go.
Perfect. If I could have the Pope come forward. Pastor Pope. We had this plan before Carl shook you down for that beginning tonight, so thank you for doing that, by the way. When I was elected sheriff, I found that there were a lot of jobs that the sheriff was responsible for. And one of those jobs, don't ask me why, is I'm in charge of the Big Thunder Park across from the courthouse. So during the summer, Open Bible Church approached and said, hey, you know, the gazebo over there is rough, the signs are falling down, you know, the county is, you know, with so much money, it was going in disrepair. So the church came forward and said, hey, would you mind if we did a project and repaired all the buildings and the gazebo and the signs over there, which we were absolutely thrilled. So their expenses at no cost to the taxpayers, their church came forward. We had talked about it, and then honestly I forgot all about it. The observant police officer that I am, about 3 months later, I'm driving by the park, and I see this beautiful gazebo and some beautiful signs. They did an amazing job. The gazebo was rotting down below. They repaired boards. They painted it. We do have weddings over there from the courthouse. There's a lot of activity that do go over there, or that does happen at the park. So we really wanted to thank, they did not do it for the credit. Obviously, I didn't even know they even did it until many months later. But I thought it was important that the county recognized their church for doing this service for the community. With that being said, we wanted to issue a certificate of appreciation presented to Open Bible Church in recognition for repairing and painting multiple signs in the gazebo in Big Thunder Park. Boone County thanks Open Bible and its members for volunteering to make Boone County and Big Thunder Park a better place. Thank you so much. Any more words?
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Pastor Dan and Open Bible Church, once again. It's come to my attention that we have kind of a special guest in our midst tonight. No, Sheriff, it's not you. You can sit down. There's a young man in our midst who has taken an interest in county government and community government, and as I understand, has been following certain things, mainly the Plody thing here, as the things go along with the city and with the county. He's been in attendance to a lot of meetings and taking notes and taking quite an interest in that. And I just wanted to give a little bit of recognition. Max Brooks, would you stand up, please, and just let us see you? Thank you. I hope that as we sit up here today, we set a good example for you and make you proud as a citizen of this community. And thank you for making us proud by taking an interest in what's going on in your local community. And I hope you continue to do that as you get older. Next up, we have appointments. I know I skipped them out of order, but I apologize because I didn't wear my glasses when I looked at it. So I would accept a motion to approve the appointments. Mr. Ellingson.
Could I ask you to separate these out and put the first two together and do the North Boone Fire by itself?
So you would like to put Caper and Rescue and Planning Commission on the first vote and do a second vote individually with North Boone 3?
Yes.
All right. We can do that. Any discussion on the first two, Cape and Rescue Squad and Boone County Regional Planning Commission. Mr. Newhouse.
Just point of order, is that a request that can be done, or does that need to be a motion and a second?
I believe in the past, we've just, the chair has just acknowledged that request by any board member and allowed that to happen.
Fair enough.
Any other discussion? Then I would accept a motion to approve the first two appointments.
So,
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I know we have at least one person here, Mr. Brandenburg, for Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand up, please, and let the board members see you, wave to them, and they can say, hey, that's the guy we voted for. We appreciate that. Thank you very much for your willing to serve. And I don't know, is Mr. Wethington or Martha Sewer or Barbara Sager here? Martha? Perfect. Thank you all very, very much for being willing to serve on committees here in Boone County and your dedication to our community. Thank you. Next up, I would accept a motion to approve Michael Winnie to North Boone District 3.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. O'Malley, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Newhouse. Discussion, Mr. Newhouse.
Recognizing the procedure on how we go about this, you've had ample time to interview this particular candidate. Were there any other candidates, and can you tell us anything about the interview?
Certainly. I can tell you that there were two candidates for this position. I met with both candidates. I spent over an hour with both candidates discussing North Boone 3, their thoughts on where the district is now, where they'd like to see it go in the future. We had quite an interesting discussion with both candidates. In the end, I felt that Mr. Winnie would give us an opportunity to allow someone else who has not been part of a trustees or a committees in the county, would allow him an opportunity to give perhaps a fresh voice and the opportunity to serve his community in a different capacity. Ms. Scott, who was the other appointee, or not the appointee, the other applicant, has served on the board in the past. So I felt as this board has liked and kind of requested in the past, that we give other people opportunities to step up when they're qualified. And I felt this individual was qualified to do so. Mr. Newhouse?
Final question. Part of anyone's commitment to any position here is the ability to physically meet the meetings. Did you feel you got ample response from the applicant that he could work around his work schedule and anything else that would occur that would allow him to be an effective member attending all meetings?
Yes. We talked about multiple things, like I said, and he made a commitment to me that he would be a valuable member of the Board of Trustees for North Boone 3. I believe his exact words to me were that I would not be disappointed if he were the one chosen to be appointed. I hold him at that word. I think he will do a fine job. I know that any other discussion from board on that? Mr. Ellingson.
thank you. Yeah, I've got concern that with what we're doing, you know, as you said, we're always looking to get other people involved, and we're always looking to wonder why people don't get involved. And the one thing that doesn't usually happen is when we have somebody come forward that's been doing a good job in a place, we decide we don't want them anymore. And I think when you've got a person that's as capable as we had, a person that works very good and has good rapport with the other members of the staff and of the trustee group, that we decide we don't like that anymore and we want to try and change the direction of things by bringing in new people. And I guess that just concerns me that, you know, that's a bad tendency to have, and if you want people to continue to help and work with you.
I would say that, just a reminder to the board, that this is fulfilling the vacant position of Mr. Morris, who moved out of county, which is why he's no longer on that board. He moved out of the county, thus making him ineligible to serve on that committee. So this isn't replacing anybody that was on that board and removing that person from that board at this time. Further discussion from the board. Mrs. Ward.
Yes, I did have several calls and emails about this one. How long is the remainder of the term?
Please don't quote me, but it's April or May. I want to say May.
That says May.
May 1st.
So May 1st. So in reality, if the concerns of the board are that this person is going to be just an awful trustee, which I highly doubt, in 5 months, the chair can make a change there. I think we all got a few emails from individuals questioning the fact that this person hasn't attended calls or things like that on that department. I guess I would question all my fellow board members, and did you call Mr. Winnie and discuss that with him? Ask him why he wasn't at those calls. Did you discuss anything with him and find out why he would be, so poor in this position? The fact of the matter is, Mr. Winnie is an iron worker in a local union. And because he's new to that position, he has to attend classes for his job, so he's not always able to make those calls. So he and I discussed that. Mr. Winnie is a 6-year Army vet. He served in Afghanistan. He was an EMT in Afghanistan. I believe he's still an EMT here. So he's qualified to be versed in the emergency response system and the emergency response teams. The fact, in reality, whether he can or he cannot make a fire call does not make him more or less qualified to serve as a trustee on the North Boone Fire District 3 board. If that were a requirement, then there are people that we've appointed in the past to other boards or fire boards. I can think of a couple to Fire District 2 who in reality were very good board members. One of them resigned when the whole firestorm happened, and any of the firemen will tell you it was a disappointment that he decided to leave. And another gentleman that was appointed to that board, they weren't heavily involved in that department at those times. But when appointed to the Board of Trustees, they took on new roles, new responsibilities, and they stepped up to the plate. I feel 100% confident that Mr. Winnie will do the same in this position. Any other discussion? I have a feeling we'll have a mixed vote, so let's do a roll call, please.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
No.
Sherry Gieske,
No.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
No.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
No.
Carl Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. I did talk to Mr. Winnie prior to this meeting, and he was unable to attend this meeting because of work commitments. So thank you for your votes for him, and I trust he will do a quality job. Next up, I have public comment. Is there any last final public comments that are going to want to be made? If you do, again, please come fill out a form and bring it up here. I will, we have quite a few, so I'm going to ask, I'm not going to give you a specific time limit, but I'm going to give you a 3 to 4 minute range and ask that you keep your comments to the point and concise and quick, so as we have many things to get to tonight. First up, we have Norman Yager on the Plody Quarry. And when you come up, please make sure you hold the microphone very close and talk straight into it. And also, please give your name and full address for the record, please.
Okay. Norman Yarger, 2685 Graham Road, Belvidere, Boone County. It's kind of tough to speak to an item that hasn't come up yet, but the Plody Quarry item on the agenda 9.1, I read over the memo, and I would like to at least put my support behind option 2 with the chart with its qualification in there for prior to 2006. And I don't know which way the board is planning to go on it, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in on it, being a nearby neighbor.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, I have Toria Funderburg regarding a speed reduction on Poplar Grove Road.
Thank you. My name is Toria Funderburg. I live at 8700 Somerset Drive, Belvidere, Illinois. Last week I talked to the Roads and Highway Department regarding reducing the speed to increase the safety factor on Poplar Grove Road for a 3-mile stretch from Woodstock going east to Lawrenceville. And this week I spoke with Justin Crone to fully more understand the safety factor about speed which is involved, and which also creates and contributes to the accident rate. I spent 2 hours going over 10 years of accident reports on that small section of road, and it included Orth, Woodstock, Spring, Squaw Prairie, Marengo, Lawrenceville, when it connected with Poplar Grove Road, as well as Lawrenceville and Bypass 20, Squaw Prairie, and Route 76, Spring Creek and Route 76, and then Caledonia and 173. The top 10 locations for accidents along that highway are normally and naturally on the roads that are most heavily traveled. On Poplar Grove Road, the intersection with Marengo ranked 6th because it had 38 accidents. Squaw Prairie was not on that list, but it was just one less with 36 incidents. But it had the only fatality that was listed in the last 10 years. I was able to read traffic reports, and more than 60% of the time, the cause was failure to yield to avoid an accident with oncoming traffic. Whether these drivers failed to stop, slowed, and then proceeded into the intersection, or stopped and then drove into oncoming cars wasn't always easy to discern, giving the information. But speed of the oncoming car was definitely a large factor. Traffic traveling on 76 often crosses Squaw Prairie roads, going east on Poplar Grove Road, and then heading south and leading out of our county. And it is true that they return that same route. All of our roads are dangerous, and many are single-car accidents, and some with deer. But this section of Poplar Grove Road from Lawrenceville to Woodstock going east, at Woodstock when it jogs and goes east, would become safer if the current speed of 55 were reduced to 45 along a 3-mile stretch, going all the way down to Lawrenceville. I traveled it going north, going 55 miles an hour, and then I turned around and traveled the same distance going south, going 45 miles an hour. And it only took me 3 minutes longer to travel that same distance. I'm not in favor of a 4-way stop, which has been talked about, nor am I in favor of spending thousands of dollars with the county money on a roundabout. True, roundabouts are safer. However, they're not practical, and they're a hindrance to farm tractors and big, long trucks. And turn lanes on Poplar Grove Road wouldn't help those who are turning onto Poplar Grove Road and into fast-coming traffic. At 55 miles an hour, the approaching vehicle is coming too fast for drivers entering the intersection to have time to either complete the turn or for oncoming vehicles to avoid contact. Justin added flashing caution signs on Poplar Grove Road asking drivers to slow to 45. That's not mandated, that's just asking them to slow at that intersection. And I believe we've had trees trimmed on the northeast corner now. I think that was done today to help improve the visibility when you stop at Squaw Prairie and you look north. However, lowering the speed limit on Poplar Grove Road for a 3-mile stretch would help the side road drivers by giving them more time to complete their turn or crossing with the faster oncoming traffic. I know it is the county board's prerogative to request lowering the speed limit because Justin can't do that. He follows state and federal laws. But when I asked him if other factors were in his speed limit tests, he said no, there was just an average of the speed limit through there. So being able to see this intersection from one to the other off my back porch, I watch traffic, and as the traffic increases in the morning, so does the speed going through. I also see 3 cars traveling along, and then one traveling really fast, catches up to them, and then passes them. He obviously is going too fast for the speed limit. So I'm requesting that the board consider this, and I'm hoping that you will change the speed and reduce it to 45 in that 3-mile stretch. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Thanks, Toria. I said thanks.
Next up, I have Angie Bodine regarding passenger rail.
Good evening. My name is Angie Bodine, and my address is 205 Lamplighter Loop Southeast in Poplar Grove. So I am the executive director of a grassroots organization called Train IL. Train is an acronym for the Rail Alliance Initiative for Northern Illinois. And as you recall, there was a referendum on the ballot in November that received 68% approval in Boone County, over 80% approval in Winnebago County, and it asked the voters if they would like to see the state of Illinois pursue reinstating passenger rail service to our community. This is a golden opportunity for economic growth for our area. Just a reminder, for this particular project, this would be on existing rail. This is not that awful GLB thing that was going to cut farms in half and take away people's ancestral lands and all of that. This is existing rail that we already have, that is already used, that would be upgraded to accommodate passenger rail service connecting us from Chicago on the east to Dubuque on the west. In his inaugural speech, Governor Pritzker talked about improving and expanding infrastructure, and he specifically mentioned rail. There are a lot of people who are paying attention to this initiative. It really looks like this may very well happen. Some people are very excited about the proposal for it to go through Belvidere. A lot of people are. Obviously, our community is, with nearly 70% approval. But there are also people who are trying to cut Belvidere completely out of the equation and send it, have Metra go to Huntley, stop there, and then have Amtrak go through Genoa, which would completely cut us out, and that would be tragic for us because we would then, again, have to sit and watch while other communities are able to have really great opportunities for economic growth, and we have nothing. So what I'm here tonight to ask you to do is please get involved. I had a meeting last night at the 317 Art Collective in Rockford. It was very well attended by people from all walks of life, all across the political spectrum. This is a nonpartisan issue. Even Representative Dave Winters was there and spoke at the meeting, and it was excellent information. As you have the thingy up there, Representative Sosnowski is having a meeting on February 8th. I will be in attendance at that. And I encourage you also to be in attendance if you have not already decided to, because this is something that we all really need to come together and work on for the benefit of our community. This is not something we want to miss out on. We need to claim our piece of the pie. If this is going to happen, we want the benefit, because even if it goes through Genoa, part of that track is going to go through Boone County, but yet we will have zero benefit for it. So let's claim our piece of the pie and not miss out on this. So please, please, please join me in making sure that Belvidere is included in the plans for passenger rail. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have Carol Gillian regarding the grain operation. Just
Hi.
make sure you do name and address, please, and talk directly into it. Pretty please.
So my name is Carol Gilliland. My address is 11070 U.S. Highway 20 in Garden Prairie. So I'm not here to oppose, but I am here to state some things that I think with the grain operations with DeLong going into the Garden Prairie area of concerns. So my first concern is rodent control. Being a grain bin and rodents like fresh food, I would like to know what DeLong, if it passes, is going to do to provide the community with safe rodent protection. The second thing is if they are allowed to bring hazardous chemicals into the area through the rail system, I'd like to know what kind of hazardous evacuation plans that they will have in place in case something like that happens. As we know, a couple of years ago or so, there was big ammonia spill in one of the towns down south, and they had to evacuate the whole town. So what will they do for the community in case that happens, including and especially the school across the street from where this is going? And the third thing is I was a trustee when Garden Prairie became a village, and within quickly a year of it not becoming a village. And the, what is that, the agricultural thing down the road that we all agreed on, the county board agreed on, and the village, when it was a village, agreed on, and has had continuously been regulated now by the EPA. And I forget, Ray, what that place is called, Garden Prairie Compost or something like that? Organics, yeah. One of the things that I do recall, and in speaking with the owner of that, I was very upset when I found out from the owner that the reason why he was doing what he was doing and we were getting such a bad smell in that town from that place was because the county board did not set any regulations to minimize what he could have on his platform for what length of time, which was part of the deal that we were making with him when we were a village. So I would prefer, if the county was going to give a special use permit, that they make it as tight as possible. And as the company complies, if they see fit to come back and ask for more, then let them do that. But the tighter it is at the beginning, the more control you'll have. And if they don't fit with what they're supposed to be doing and what they're supposed to provide, then they can't grow any bigger than they want to, than you give them the restrictions in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have Mike Hollander.
Hi, thanks. Mike Hollander, 7211 Garden Prairie Road in Garden Prairie.
Mr. Hollander, I need you to hold that microphone really close and talk directly into it. You almost have to swallow it. I'm sorry.
Better?
Yes, it's
All right.
it's more so that we can make sure we record everything that's
good.
said. Yeah.
Good, okay. That's part of what we'll talk about. Good evening, members of the board, and thank you for allowing me a few minutes here. I'd first like to ask that you review your process of information gathering on projects seeking approval from this board. As I have attempted to understand your procedures, it is alarmingly clear that the current model used by the board and its various committees is extremely outdated and not conducive to gaining information aimed at informed decisions. I'm dismayed to learn that not much has changed in the last 10 years since we were last trying to protect our community from harm. A group of concerned neighbors from Garden Prairie have spent hundreds of hours researching and compiling facts regarding the railroad yard granary proposal. We went to both the ZBA and planning committee meetings and presented vast amounts of information, only to learn from you that none of our data was put into the record from these meetings for other county board members to see. Even more disturbing is the fact that most members of this board have no information at all in order to make an informed decision. So no one is paying attention or caring that the good of the community is not being addressed in the decisions that the board is making. Let's remember, just because Mr. DeLong hired an attorney does not mean that you are hearing the actual facts. It means you are hearing only what they want you to know so that you will say yes to this project. They have every intention of then doing whatever they want. If you listen closely to Mr. Noble's answers to any posed inquiries at all meetings, it is apparent that there are huge, unspoken plans for that land once they get their foot in the door. Once it's okayed, the monster is then on the loose. When we first came to this board in October, we had missed any and all prior meetings where this project was discussed. We didn't fit into the very narrow area that was deemed as adjoining properties, so we were never informed about any hearings or meetings. If this is such a great opportunity for the community, as Mr. Johnson stated to the Rockford Register-Star in September, why not notify the whole town? Every aspect of these proceedings has seemed shady and rubber-stamped with an attempt to keep community residents in the dark. Supposed benefits like how the farmers will benefit because DeLong will offer more money per bushel is pure nonsense. The negatives like massive increase in truck traffic, safety concerns, impact to the environment were all passed over as inconsequential. Instead, we were told that we wouldn't even know it's there. When a zero frontage has been allowed and way too many railroad cars crammed into an area too small for it, don't tell us, we won't know it's there. When all of our information has been ignored and very little, if any, discussion took place among committee members, it points to a hidden agenda that the residents know nothing about. The only one who will benefit here is Mr. DeLong in his pocketbook. We shared information with the committee, such as Garden Prairie Road being blocked for over 10 minutes at a time to allow for the train to enter and leave the yard. Blocking and delaying emergency services and backing up traffic, increasing the likelihood of major accidents. Trains being loaded overnight, causing significant noise so they can meet their 15-hour deadline. The schools not being in favor of this project. Bonus Township not being in favor of this project. The Boone County Soil and Water Conservation District not being told about a railroad yard, so they only evaluated the granary request. How the 62-page report from the Boone County Soil and Water Conservation District included that the ground will likely settle, which could mean things falling over. Since January 1st, one firefighter has died in a grain silo explosion in Iowa. In fact, there were 7 explosions in 2017, where 12 people were injured and 5 people died. Devastation to the environment, immense loss of property value, 40 years of natural truck traffic happening overnight with the flip of the switch. Yet all of this information did not go in the record. Why? Did we not present it correctly? The information about correct procedure is not readily available and is not posted on your county website. You tolerated us sharing vast amounts of information, but it feels as though it's just a waste of time since we were not heard. Minds were made up long before we ever found out about this. Many of you on this board told us what a great guy Mr. DeLong is as you do business with him. Mr. Stark is a next-door neighbor and does business with him regularly and is eagerly awaiting for this decision to be approved so he can do more work. Mr. Newhouse told us anecdote after anecdote about his mother buying a home right across the street from an established granary and how much she loves it there. What he did not share was how this was an established granary and the home had been devalued already, and there is no railroad there. Our situation is much different. This is not an attack against Mr. DeLong personally. Again, as many of you told us, he's a great guy. The bottom line is this is just not the correct place to put this massive project. Mr. Ellingson shared that before he got on this board, he thought like we did, that the county doesn't care about individual homeowners. Once he got on the board, he saw things differently, and we just don't understand the process. No, sir, I disagree with you. I, too, sat on a board, and our primary responsibility was to make decisions that would benefit the whole community. Guess what? Your bylaws say the same thing. The first question is, does this benefit the whole community or just the applicant? At the planning committee meeting this month, a resident asked a question: how is this project good for the community? You, sir, Mr. Ellingson, responded, we can't really answer that right now. Perhaps one day it will create jobs and strengthen the infrastructure. Really? Even his own narrative told you there's no jobs coming. It will not. So even though the applicant's own narrative explicitly states it will not create jobs, this is the best answer available for a straightforward question of how is this good for the community? We all know that this is not good for any community. Where else is a project of this magnitude put in the middle of a residential community, especially with zero frontage, so it's right on the road? As elected representatives of our community, how can you so brazenly approve this when we prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this is not beneficial to our community? There has been no evidence that this is in any way good. It poses direct and dangerous consequences. I guess it does prove one thing, though. If you have money, and you know people on this board, you can do whatever you want and get anything passed, even if the end result will cripple a community. You can destroy your neighborhood in Boone County, all to profit one person. And just so you know, this will be the only place in America to allow a railroad yard right in the middle of a neighborhood and not in a blight district. This is a travesty. Some of you wear ChemTool's decision on your back. Tonight you have a chance to make the right decision for the whole community and just say no. Remember, tonight is your legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, I have Leonard Durham. Once again, please talk directly into the microphone and state your name and address, please.
I'll try and talk into it. I'd also ask that each of you do the same, too, because some of us might have a little hearing impairment. We don't want to admit it.
Closer.
We will do our best, sir. Thank you.
You really have to get closer. Closer.
Still closer.
Closer.
Yeah, you almost have to turn it on edge and talk directly, just like that. Yes, sir.
Well, you know, the last time I was up here, we had those, and you could tell when you were talking right into it.
You could use this if you'd like.
Well, it might help. This might make me more long-winded then. You know, I'd like to start out with, I am opposed to this rail. Oh, I'm sorry. Leonard Durham, 7239 Garden Prairie Road. All right, I'm opposed to the rail loop where it's going to be situated. I want to just kind of point out on the light industrial zoning, and I'll lead off with that, and then we'll see my opinion. I'll present why I don't think it fits the situation. Light industry, according to 3.11.1, it's intended to permit industries which encourage the development of wholesale warehousing, assembly, limited manufacturing, which are clean, quiet, free of hazardous or objectionable elements, such as noise, odor, dust, smoke, or glare. This district is designed for businesses that operate entirely within enclosed structures and generate little industrial traffic. Little industrial traffic. Key words here. This district is further designed to act as a transitional area between general industrial activities and other less intense non-industrial uses. So we're going from residential to general industry. It's supposed to be a transition. I do not call a railroad, 110-car train, and a locomotive light industry. I don't see how anybody can. All right, on the required conditions, 3.11.3, completely enclosed buildings. All storage, except the motor vehicles in operable condition, shall be within completely enclosed buildings or within the rear yard, effectively screened by a solid wall fence, not less than 6 feet nor more than 8 feet. Now this is all This sounds nothing like a railroad. Not to mention the noise that accompanies it as they're switching cars, moving cars. Now, on 3.16, allowable uses. Freight terminals, motor or rail, they are not permitted. I realize that's why we're here. All right, this is definitely not light industry. The effect on the neighborhood is going to be noisy, dirty, poor appearance. We're going to be looking out at the rail cars, the grain cars with graffiti. It does not fit the site. It's already been proposed 0 setbacks, 20-foot setback from Garden Prairie Road. If it doesn't fit, it shouldn't be there. Why are we handing out these variances? Just hand it to them. If it does not belong there. We're going to eliminate, by the miles saved on the roads, trucking to Chicago, we're going to eliminate, according to my figures, at least 20 trucking jobs. Also, we've got the mechanics to take care of the trucks, motor fuel tax, truck sales. All right, we're going to gain 2 employees at this loading facility for the rail cars. I thought it was all about creating jobs and adding to the economy. If we're losing 20-some jobs, that's at least $800,000 or more dollars we're going to lose right there. And we're going to employ 2 more individuals at approximately $55,000 a year. Doesn't add up to me. Right now it's proposed 27 trains per year. Well, this is going to be at least 10,000 semis. Going by the school, up and down Garden Prairie Road, turning in, coming out, stopping, starting. And it's only going to become worse. There'll be more traffic. We're going to have more crop production. He's going to gain more traffic probably from other areas too. Are going to bring it to him instead of going to Chicago with it. So who knows where it could end up, how much production would be there. And I also hear that they're going to fill the ditch in. They're going to make a left turn lane. They'll probably cut down all those fence line trees there because they're going to need every little inch that they can get out of this construction. I know some of the trees have to be replaced. Where are they going to be replaced? They're not going to help us for seeing the view on the trains or anything. It's not going to be a pretty sight for us. We're trading off, or we're just going to see the train because there's not room to put the trees there. That's why they're going to take them out. And I know we're going to add a dryer. Mr. DeLong stated that if this passed, that he would have the right to go ahead and put a dryer in there. Well, then we're going to have the added noise of a dryer. And all this, I might add, sits northwest of the community. So prevailing winds are going to carry the noise, the pollution, everything else, noise, debris, dust. And you've all seen how the humidity has increased in this area. We got the green mold on everything, and you can't tell me all that moisture that I see going in the atmosphere coming out of a grain dryer is going to help our situation any when we're downwind of it. All right. I've asked and tried to point out, I am very worried about my value of my property. And I don't see any reason why you can't stipulate that they evaluate our property, if you so pass this, that they evaluate our property beforehand. And in the future, after it's concluded, the project, and in operation and everything, to reevaluate it, protect our value of our property. You just kind of ignored it in a committee that I've talked before here. So, does anybody have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there any other further public comment? I don't have any more slips, so I'm assuming there is not. Okay, next up, Council on Aging.
We meet next week, so I have no report.
Super. Thank you, sir. Growth Dimensions. We have a special presentation from Ms. Fettis
Evening.
and
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wolf.
My name is Pamela Lopez Fettis. I'm here today. I'm the executive director. I'm here today with John Wolf. John Wolf is our president of Growth Dimensions Board. And we just wanted to share with you, in 2018, we had a great year. We had good opportunities for growth within our community and new businesses, sparking interest and opportunities for potential growth. In 2019, we really want to focus our marketing, target our marketing toward businesses and attracting businesses we'd like to see. We want to increase our visibility and showcase our greatest assets in our community. We also want to expand our work with businesses in order to help them develop those solutions, the financial support, the resources, the sites, and the information that they need in order to continue their growth. Most recently, we've been working with a company that had a fire in Boone County, working with their temporary needs while they're able to rebuild. But these are solutions that we are sometimes have to be very readily available for businesses in order to maintain them in our county. So we couldn't possibly do this without the support of our investors. Our investors provide us with the resources that we need in order to attract and retain our businesses in the community. We hope that this partnership you found as valuable as we have in our community. So we wanted to present a plaque to the Boone County Board for their investment in economic development in Belvidere and Boone County.
John Wolf, board chairman this year. One of the things that I think we all in the volunteer efforts that we do within our community, when you have an organization that's 40 years old this year, I can tell you I'm proud to say generationally, second generation that's helped with the economic development of Belvidere and Boone County. It is so important that we create jobs and retain jobs, and we're here to personally thank the Boone County Board for your support and everything you do to do that within our county. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Ward?
I have one question for them.
Pam,
If I could.
you can't go yet.
Sure. You have a position on the DeLong project?
I have some familiarity with the DeLong project and what they presented to this community. I do feel that they have had a tremendous investment to our community, and sometimes the growth doesn't relate into number of jobs. Sometimes it also translates into their investment in the community, the opportunity to grow and increase our product and our production and the attraction. Some things spur other growth and other activities. So I support the growth that they're planning in their area. I know that there's concerns regarding the noise factor, and I think that businesses are very sensitive to those issues. Growth is going to happen, and there's always pros and cons to the growth, and I think as a community we have to target where we want to see that growth happen and where we want to conserve our ag and our residential community.
But as a board, Kathy, we have not taken a vote or a poll on this at all.
Any further questions from the board for Growth Dimensions? Thank you very much. We appreciate the plaque, and thank you for all you do for our community. Thank you so much. Next up, CASA. I don't know if Charlotte was here.
That would be me.
Mr. Carlisle.
That would be me. CASA has a couple of things going on right now for some fundraisers. It's called For Icon concert with four different types of musicians. It's on the website. if you need some information on that, I think we had dropped some off here earlier last month that I had. But as for the CASA report, we've actually done, we have 20 advocates that are active right now, and we currently have 41 active families that we're supporting. And just a bit of reference, in 2015 we had 88 families. 2016 we had 81. 2017 we had 74. And last year we had 56. It's a downward trend that could be a positive. We are supporting the right thing for our community with these kids that do need our help. So I appreciate everything that the board and the county has done for CASA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman,
Carlisle.
I just have
Yeah,
one question
Ms.
for
Ward.
Mr. Carlisle. You know, I've been hearing that there are some serious money concerns. Is that the case, sir?
What we were talking about, we are okay. We just have to find out where the funds that we had through the courts, how we're going to transfer those over to CASA.
I know you do wonderful work. I was just wondering how serious it might be. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Carlisle, you mentioned the fundraiser, the Four Icons fundraiser. Did you mention that date, or do you have that date?
I don't have that date at the top of my head.
Okay. All right. Super. Next up, Board of Health. Ms. Mail.
Good evening, County Board and members of the public. My name is Amanda Mail, and I am the administrator at the Boone County Health Department. Just have a couple of announcements to make.
Amanda, I'm getting yelled at. You have to talk louder into the microphone, please.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before. Is that better? Is that okay?
Much better. Thank
Great.
you.
Okay. So as I continue to educate the board and members of the public about the health department's process towards national public health accreditation, we've been talking about our wheel. I will pass that around and I'll highlight just a few domains very briefly. Want to let you know that under domain 1, which is monitor health, we are continuing to work with the state of Illinois and surrounding states to monitor the hepatitis A outbreak among homeless populations, incarcerated populations, and other targeted groups across the country. We are currently not in outbreak status in the state of Illinois, but all of our surrounding states are, and we have hepatitis A vaccinations available at the Boone County Health Department for the targeted populations that we're concerned about here in Boone County. So please spread the word if someone is concerned that they might have been exposed or that they may need that vaccine. They are welcome to contact our office or walk in, and we will provide them with some additional information. In the state of Illinois, we're currently monitoring moderate flu activity. So influenza is picking up and will peak most likely at the end of January or the beginning of February. And we have flu shots available for folks with insurance, folks with partial insurance, and folks without insurance. So if you all can push the word out to individuals in the community that may not have access to a flu shot that still need one, we'd be more than happy to provide them with that. Domain 3, which is inform, educate, and empower. I'm going to go ahead and pass around information on the upcoming Narcan trainings. We're about 9 months into providing those trainings that are free of charge to the community and open to the public. And there are trainings coming up on the 23rd of January and the 30th of January at 5:30 p.m. in the Boone County Health Department conference room. We are also offering a Public Health 101, if you will, overview on our programs and services. This is geared towards regional nursing students and medical students, but I will share with you that Sherry Bartelt was able to attend one of our workshops that we hosted at Rasmussen College last week, and I got some good feedback from her. Sherry, I don't know if you want to share anything with the board about the overview that we give. I would encourage all of you to attend one of our overviews if you'd like to. So,
Well, I had the opportunity to go to Rasmussen College a couple Friday mornings ago. It was a 2-hour meeting. It was extremely interesting. I learned so much that I did not know about the county board and what it did. I was truly amazed. I think it's worthwhile for anybody in the county board or everyone in the county board to go to this if they have the time and the opportunity to do it. It was interesting, and I also got to meet all the students that would be coming to this county. on their way to becoming an RNs or whatever they want to become, and how interesting it was. And during this thing, I also learned a few more things about, what should I say, the cupcake law. And it was truly interesting that there are so many sides to that. It is unreal. I have a new respect for it. I just hope we can come to an agreement on it. Thank you.
Thanks. So that'll be next Tuesday at 1 p.m. again here in the Boone County Health Department conference room over next door. Domain 4 is mobilizing community partnerships, and in line with the Narcan trainings, just to make the members of the public who are here tonight aware, our current opioid overdose rate is higher than the state average, so we are concerned about that, and we are continuing to work with our Boone County Behavioral Health Task Force to address those issues. We are in the phase of our process where we have completed our sequential intercept map, which I've shared with all of you. It is available on the Health Department website. We were able to work with the State Health Department to get even more detailed data and statistics about Narcan saves in this county and also about overdose rates. So we were able to add some additional data to that report in the last month, which we're pretty excited about. We have prioritized a list of 5 federal grants that we are moving forward towards going after, and we are developing a plan with Region 1 Planning Council to create the timeline for the process of applying for those grants. Barring that the federal shutdown will end at some point in the near future, we should be able to move forward with that process. And I will be presenting at the City Council meeting on January 28th in regards to the task force and the work that we're doing, and discuss with them steps to get some city funding to move the projects forward as well, in addition to the county funding that has already been secured. So thank you very much for that support. Domain 5 is developing policies, and I would just like to bring to everybody's attention that there is going to be another poverty simulation this year. We hosted one 2 years ago. We had 80 members of the community present, and the date for that will be in April. It'll be April 16th of 2019. I'll pass around the save the date cards, and there will be more information forthcoming to the board soon. We are also working on policies in related to a possible proposed ordinance for e-cigarettes and vaping products. Our regional tobacco efforts include information on cigarette and cigar smoke in public places and the rules and stipulations associated with that, and we are now moving forward with some proposed recommendations for e-cigarettes and vaping, so I'll have more information for you on that in upcoming months. And the last thing that I would just like to highlight briefly is Domain 7, which is link to and provide care. We are working with the Region 1 Planning Council to help push out information on 2 transportation surveys that are happening right now, and I did send an email out to county board members last week clarifying that yes, there are 2 surveys going on at the moment. There is a Rockford Mass Transit District survey, and that is to survey both in English and Spanish, available online and in paper copy, ridership and potential ridership, as well as community organizations that would like to put input into the current bus lines and public transportation options here in Boone County, hoping that we can see maybe some expansion of the routes and availability of public transportation here in Boone County. The other survey is the Plan 2050, and that's through the Region 1 Planning Council. It is their strategic transportation plan, which includes not only bus routes, but also pedestrian ways and bicycle lanes and park paths and different ways in which people can move around both Winnebago County and Boone County. So I will pass around information on both of those, but I did send out an email clarifying what is available. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Questions for Health Department? Seeing none. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Next up, Regional Planning Council. Ken, anything? I don't think there hasn't been any meetings, so. Mr. Carlisle?
Because of technology, I actually got the information on the 4 icons. Yeah, if I may.
Absolutely. You've been waiting to use that board all
Yeah,
night,
I've
haven't
been
you?
dying to use this board. If you like Patsy Cline, Roy Orbison, John Denver, and/or Neil Diamond, these four talented people will be at the community building. And we're going to be there at February 24th, 2 p.m. $15 gets you in. These people actually are in our area, and they're pulling for CASA, and they are quite talented. If you'd like to see them, I highly suggest you take the time to go see them. Thank you.
Just to clarify, it's not really Patsy Cline, Roy Orbison, and these are imitators, correct?
What? Yes, they are. I'd hate to see some of them come up today.
It could be quite interesting.
Yes, it could be. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Next up, is there any other boards? I don't think, Ken, anything? I'd accept a motion to approve the general consent items.
So moved.
Motion by, I'm sorry, who was that? By Jessica Milner, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. O'Malley?
The Boone County Veterans Club is a new name to me. Is that the VFW? I think their corporate name is VFW. It's not Boone County.
Yeah, it says Boone County Veterans Club. It's the VFW? That is the VFW, I'm being told. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, planning and zoning. Mr. Ellingson.
Thank you. We have 9.1 is the motion directing staff to introduce a text amendment application regarding quarry operations in A1 zoned areas.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Mr. Newhouse. Staff report.
As you are aware, the Beverly Materials, otherwise known as Plody Quarry, has applied to the county to renew their special use permit for the quarry operation that's presently going on. We received an application for a text amendment to increase the hours during the day and also the duration of the permit from 5 years to 10 years. Also, they have filed a special use just to re-up the quarry project. In the course of processing this application and analyzing it, it looks like the county has some issues with its own code that the board needs to look at and fix. And basically, the code really doesn't allow quarries in A1 zoning. This quarry's been going on for years and years, and staff pointed out that, or we'd like to point out that the way the code stands right now makes it problematic to even process their application. Now, from the company's standpoint, they're doing everything correctly. They're following the rules as they know it, based on a settlement agreement and consent decree and everything. So this is to no fault of the company. This is an issue with our own code that we feel we have to fix in order to properly process the application. So in the course of doing that, legal counsel has come up with some ideas. So if the state's attorney wants to interrupt me, if I'm doing fine, just give me the signal. But we think the wording that's being proposed really does fix this problem, and it's a county issue. It's an issue with our code that should have been addressed years ago.
That's correct. There is in the materials a legal opinion from Ansel Glick, which is one of the premier law firms in Illinois on land use, outlining the issue and then options for the board to consider. And I guess if anyone has any questions regarding those options or, like Ken said, this is an issue that should have been addressed in 2005, but it was not. And now we need to address it before going forward.
Could you go through the two options and explain the difference and if there's a preferred method?
There's actually three, but I think Mrs. Ward had a question.
Sorry,
I don't know
Ms.
if
Ward?
Yeah, I just had a question. So right now, they are in A1, and it's not allowed in A1. Is that correct?
That is correct. So basically, and the reason why, well, I'll get to that, I guess, in option 3. But so option 1 would be to rezone the property to I2, which is where quarrying operations are allowed by special use permit. One of those issues then is if you open it up to all the other uses in I2 if you were to rezone the property. Option 2 outlines that we could open it up in A1. I guess option 2 is, I guess, kind of a twofold. You could open it up to A1, in general, because that's where they are located, currently in A1. Or you could make it very narrow in A1, and as Attorney Tappendorf suggests, clarifying it as to only allowed by a special use in A1 district when the use is subject to a settlement agreement and consent order existing prior to 2006, which would then cover this property, but then not open it up to other A1 properties that don't meet that criteria. And the third option would be that the county not do anything to amend their code, and her opinion is that that would then lead to a lawsuit by the company because we, back in 2005, agreed to a settlement agreement that's a contract under the law, and that if we do not fix the issue, it'd be breach of contract, and ultimately a court would order us to fix that breach, would then, again, go back to one of these options of fixing our code to allow that property to operate with a valid special use permit.
Question for the state's attorney or staff? Ms. Milner.
If we go with the second option, are we potentially setting ourselves up for, I'm under the understanding that there are counties in the state that are having problems with fracking sand extraction from farm properties. I mean, is that something that would be permitted in A1 at that point?
If you're talking about A1 with the clarifying condition, I don't believe that that would open us up to anything along those lines, and I'm not sure if fracking would.
They extract sand for the purposes of use in fracking. It's a commodity that I don't understand fracking. I'm not a scientist, liberal arts degree.
But sand is a commodity that
right, earth material extraction. It would be allowed if we went with option 2, is what I'm asking.
That is correct.
Ms. Ward.
Would we be just rezoning this one area where they're located then, or it would be?
We're not actually rezoning. Well, it depends on what option you pick. If you're talking about
Right.
option 2, we are. It would still be A1, but a special use would be allowed in A1 under the clarifying condition that the property in question is allowed a special use when the property was subject of a settlement agreement and consent order prior to 2006. So it very narrowly tailors to the property in question. And any other. But it wouldn't rezone it. It would still be A1, but it would be allowed pursuant to our code.
If it helps, it's the desire by staff to kind of limit that ability of any other A1 to become a quarry. And that's why the narrow focus in the condition is suggested that could be on there. By rezoning it to I2, that whole property, that could open up a whole gamut of a whole lot of other things that I'm not sure that we, unless the board chooses that they're fine with that, then that's a decision that we get to make. I'm not certain that we want to do that, though. I think option 2 is a real good option. Mr. Newhouse.
personally, I'm not interested in putting an I-2 label on anything where the water table has shown to be in close proximity to the surface. I think it would be opening ourselves up to risks that I don't want to open up. To the state's attorney, in the past, you and also other state's attorneys prior to your arrival here have been concerned with spot zoning or spot classifications for a parcel. With that in mind, is this the cleanest way, number two, or the simplest way? And would that simplicity be enough to say, yep, this is what we have to do to fix our problem that has been on the books for over 10 years now?
I guess I would just like to make 2 points in regards to that. Just something that kind of was mentioned by Carl, or Chairman, that the staff didn't want to open it up to A1. And I think maybe the more proper way to phrase that would be that it is an option for the board to open it up to A1, but it was staff's understanding that most likely the board did not want to do that, or would maybe want an option to have something other than to open up to all the A1 properties. And in regards to the spot zoning, because this is an A1, that is why, in part, we sought legal counsel from this law firm, because they do craft these conditions and work with counties such as ours to make sure that they are in legal compliance and will then hopefully withstand scrutiny in court. So it's my opinion that if our attorneys have recommended this, looking at our code, and that in general with the zoning laws in Illinois, she believes that this will survive the scrutiny.
Ms. Milner.
Would it be appropriate to, at this time, make a motion that we move towards option 3 and see if there was anyone else on the board that was interested in that direction?
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion by Ms. Milner for utilizing option 3, which would be, as I understand it, to do basically nothing. Is there a second? Once again, I'll ask, is there a second for the motion? One last time, I'll ask, is there a second for the motion? Motion fails due to a lack of a second. Mr. Ellingson, did you have a comment?
I guess I was just thinking that the idea of this motion was to ask the staff, after discussion was held at the last planning meeting, to look at the best option that takes care of this. This is a problem that happened some time ago. We can say it happened because of the court order to let them operate after the county board had said it maybe shouldn't happen. But irregardless of what it was a mistake, really, sometime in the past. We need to fix it and get on with things without leaving an error sitting on the books for the next person to catch and bring us something we don't want because their books are wrong. So I think the intent was to ask staff to go ahead and rewrite, bring it forward. It will go before the standing committees that are there for text amendments, correct? So we'll go through several committees and come back to the county board once it's cleared those and have a proposal then for us actually to vote on a set plan, which could change between now and then. But at least it lets the staff go ahead and figure out what plan is best as they see it and then start moving it through the process.
Mr.
Okay.
O'Malley.
Mr. O'Malley?
I thought we had to fix this before we went ahead with that procedure you're talking about. We have to fix our old error, then proceed from there with your process.
Yeah,
address that.
I understood it.
State's Attorney.
Well, what would happen is that if, just like any other text amendment that's proposed, whether it's from staff, a business, a citizen, it has to go through ZBA, PZB, and then come back to the board. So there would be a public hearing at ZBA for any testimony regarding or any other concerns regarding any text amendment proposed. So that's what I think the staff is looking for here is I just clarification of which option to go forward with based on his opinion.
Mr. Newhouse.
Just one quick question. If a person was to move the second option, move forward through the process to the state's attorney, my hope is that you have a good long run in the state's attorney's office. And my concern is that if and when the time comes that you choose to retire, that the next state's attorney might not look at the proposed clarifying conditions from the second option and say, you know what, I read that a little differently than what may be thought. Are we kind of rock solid on what we have for clarifying conditions that we're considering at this point?
Yes, I believe that we are on solid ground going forward with the clarifying condition and proposing a text amendment. And based on my own research, based on the fact that, again, we have a law firm that specializes in land use providing this to us based on our discussions, I believe that we would be, I guess, solid going forward. Of course, laws can change, circumstances can change, but to the best of our ability at this point in time, I believe that is the option, if that's what you want to do, to narrowly tailor it to A1 and fix the issue.
Ms. Kieske?
I was going to make a motion.
So if we have a motion on the floor to go for a text amendment, so
No,
what we would need...
Excuse me. I did the second, yes.
I'm sorry? You did the second for the motion, yeah. No, what I was going to say is if you'd like to make a motion as to one of these options, then you would want to amend that motion on the floor to be consistent with a particular option. Ms. Kieske?
Thank you. Then I will state what I have to admit that I think that our state's attorney has done an excellent job of seeking a professional in that field. And I, for one, on this board, can honestly tell you I would never second-guess the opinion of that attorney whose primary job is land use. So I don't think I, for one, would ever want to participate in making a decision of which of those options are there. We're going to pay her a lot of money, and she's going to tell us which is the best one to protect us and to make sure that the county is protected and we move forward. So I'm not into the option picking because I don't know enough about it.
Mr. Newhouse?
In light of the previous motion that came forward in consideration of the third option, I considered that inappropriate, that if we knew we had a problem, that we would choose to do nothing about it. So I'm glad that did not get a second. So at this point, I would, and I don't know if the correct term is move to proceed with the second option or recommend to move forward with the second option, but that would be my desire.
So your desire is to amend the motion on the floor to include the second option. Is that strictly the language in the first part of the second option, or are you wanting to add the restrictions also?
Second option with the highlighted language under the clarifying conditions.
Okay, so a motion by Mr. Newhouse to amend the motion to proceed as a text amendment with the second option and the clarifying conditions. Is there a second?
I would second, and if I may make a comment.
Yep. Second by Ms. Mueller.
I misread the material. I'm just going to confess that when I made the motion for option 3 because I misread it. I thought that option 2 was a blanket allowance of mineral extraction and that the option 3 was to add the clarifying condition. I misread it.
Here at the Boone County Board on tonight, we're going to let that slide.
Thanks, guys.
Next month, maybe not, but this tonight.
Board of Review and all.
Yeah.
No, I'm absolutely comfortable moving with
thank you.
the clarifying conditions.
Clarification. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Ellingson.
I guess I have a question, but first question is, I think we actually have an amendment at this point, don't we?
Yes. So I'm assuming your discussion is on the amendment.
It is on the whole thing, yes. But I guess I want to ask the state's attorney, do you feel, I mean, I thought when the motion came forward, it was to give you and the attorneys you were working with and the other staff you were working with the opportunity to look at it and decide which is our best option as we bring it forward to committee to work on it. Are we tying your hands by saying, take this option?
I think that the board makes the policy, and there's different policies related to the different options. And if the board, I guess, is choosing the option that the second option with the clarifying conditions, I think that that is, I think, what we may be anticipated and would be fine moving forward with.
Okay.
But we would clearly do whatever the board intended, whatever the like I said, this is a policy decision between the three options.
Ms. Ward?
Would it be safe to say it's your recommendation as well, though?
It is based on my review of the materials and with, the input from Attorney Tappendorf. Yes. But
And it still has to go through all the committees.
correct. It will still go to ZBA. It will still be a public hearing.
It
This
could
is-
still change.
It could still change, yes. This is just giving us a direction to go to fix the problem. There's many options to fix the problem, but now we have some direction, and you have a little background and knowledge, I guess, as to how those options came up and what each option would mean.
Mr. O'Malley?
Now, as I understand it, there's one other quarry called Quality, is that right?
Quality Aggregates. I'm not sure if that's still the name they're operating under. But
That's the only other quarry in the county?
well, no.
It's operating.
No, that's not correct. There's several quarries that are operating under different legal abilities, such as some are grandfathered in, some were operating and have special uses that were awarded by a court prior to the zoning change that took quarrying out of A1. So Quality Aggregates in particular, when they applied for their special use, it was allowed as a special use in A1. So there's nothing.
So they are A1 now?
They are A1, but when they're grandfathered in because when they applied, it was a special use in A1. At some point, the board decided in approximately 2002, 2003 to remove the quarry as a special permit in A1 and leave it only in I2.
So we have no I2 quarries?
Not that I'm aware of, but don't quote me on that.
Not to my knowledge.
I just want to see some actual consistency, because if we have an I2 and we make them I2, we need to be consistent with the whole county, I would think. I don't think we want to get different ones.
Unfortunately, it is kind of piecemeal just on the fact that when quarries started their operation and under what zoning code, if any, when they started operations. For example, I know there's a quarry that was operating before we had any zoning code, and they continue to operate, and as long as they continue to operate, then they're grandfathered in and aren't subject to the zoning code.
Mr. Ternoni?
Just perspective from the staff viewpoint in working with the legal counsel, we were not supportive at all of the idea of the I-2 for this quarry part. It was something we simply could not recommend because it becomes I-2 forever, and it just wasn't something we thought was in the best interest. We also couldn't recommend doing nothing or doing anything that opens this up to A zoning everywhere. So that's why it's very helpful to have the legal counsel, and we thought a text amendment was the way out of this, but we didn't have, the expertise to come up with what you have here. So,
Further questions for staff? Okay, we'll do a roll call on the amendment first. Roll call on the amendment, which is to tag option 2 to the original motion. Roll call, please.
Jeff Carlisle?
Yes.
Denny Ellingson?
Yes.
Sherry Gieske?
Yes.
Carl Larson?
Yes.
Ray Larson?
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner?
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse?
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley?
Yes.
Kathy Ward?
Yes.
Carl Johnson?
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Any discussion on the motion as amended, which would be to direct staff to go ahead and produce a text amendment? Roll call, please.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Giesky.
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Mulner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson.
Item 9.2 is a motion to approve case number 41-2018, Redcoat Estates replat.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Ms. Giesky. Staff report.
This is a subdivision that was platted before the Great Recession. It was originally 4 lots. The developer disappeared. The gentleman who bought this subdivision is basically requesting to reduce it to 2 lots with a replat. And our view is to support that proposal contingent on the conditions, and also point out that in doing so, this would not be a public road. It would be a private road, and the developer owner is willing to agree to that, and most importantly, the township's willing to agree with that. So it would not become a road that turns over to the township to have to manage or maintain. It passed committee, and the applicant's attorney is here tonight if you have questions.
Any questions of staff from the board? The applicant attorney is here, and the applicant. Any statement you'd like to make?
Only if you guys have any questions. I think it's a pretty straightforward issue. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Any further discussion? Nope, I thought Mr. Ellingson was waving his hand there for a second.
They're just getting ready for a vote.
All right, sounds super. Roll call, please.
Sherry Giesky,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Mulner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson.
9.3 is a motion to approve ordinance 19-28 or 19-08, case number 30-2018. The applicant, Illinois PV Boone 1 LLC, is AKA Sunrise Development LLC of Manitoba Avenue, Suite 200, Minnesota, is asking for special use permit pursuant to Section 2.7 and Section 3.161.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Mr. Newhouse. Staff report.
Another solar project. This is located in Bonus Township on 40 acres. The conditions are largely the same that you've seen for all of these projects. And the applicant representatives are here at the meeting if there are any questions.
Any questions for staff from the board? The applicant is here, and the representative. Anything you'd like to say? No statement? Any questions for the applicant? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Mulner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
No.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
No.
Sherry Giesky.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson.
9.4 is a motion to approve ordinance 19-09, case number 31-2018.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Miller. Staff report.
This is another solar project. Same company, same concept, on 65 acres. It's in Boone Township, and the company representatives are here this evening for answering questions.
Any other information from staff on it? Any questions of staff? Mr. Newhouse?
Ken, at PZB, we had discussion and then I believe an understanding with the applicant for an alteration of where this was going to be set up on the farm. It was moved from primarily the northern half of the farm to primarily the western half of the farm. The map still shows the original northern layout. I'm wondering if the conditions follow that map or if there has indeed been a change or not.
Mr. Ternoni?
Well, the map I have on board docs is the map that we have. Is this the revised map? I believe it is.
I've got an old map, and or whatever my map is the one we had at PZB, and I see yours is different, so I want to make sure we're all voting on the same thing here.
We received a revised map from the company, and this is what we put on board docs for the board meeting tonight. So.
Okay, Mr. Newhouse?
I just want to thank the applicant for being willing to make this change. The neighbors were of, I think, one voice, as in they didn't want the glass right on top of them, and appreciate making this adjustment.
Any further discussion for staff? Any statement from the applicant? Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
No.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
No.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson?
9.5 is a motion to approve ordinance 19-10, case number 21-2018.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Staff report.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Yes, Mr. Newhouse.
With the farm business I'm involved with, and my being a customer of DeLong's, I will be removing myself from the discussion and abstaining from the vote tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Staff report.
This is the DeLong proposal text amendment, which would amend the Boone County Code to allow for an application for the rail loop or spur line to connect to an existing and active Class 1 rail line. This is the text amendment that, if enacted, allows the special use application to move forward for consideration.
Questions of staff? Is the applicant's counsel here, or the applicant?
Yes.
Any statement or discussion or anything?
Not on this particular one, unless, again, board members have any questions. I will remind the board that this was before you previously, so we did have some discussion, but if you want me to review anything, I certainly will.
Any questions of the applicant from the board? Looks like you're off the hook again. Oh, Mr. Larson, I'm sorry. Mr. Ray Larson.
I have some questions. Maybe the applicant or maybe the state's attorney or Ken could answer.
And that's on the first one here, correct? Your questions are regarding the first one?
The amendment to change the Boone County Code, yes, to allow the special use to be in a I-1 district, yes.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure we're not confusing them. Go ahead.
Okay, can any of you tell me what a railroad is considered? Is that considered heavy industrial?
I don't know if that's more a question for the planner,
For
if there's a qualification. I don't sure if it's classified. It's not in our zoning code now. I don't know if that.
Chuck, do you want to? Can you answer?
Part of the reason, well, Chuck comes up here or someone else comes up here. Part of the reason that this is before you is it's not clearly defined. I guess there was another option of my client proceeding forward without it, but we wanted to cooperate and ask permission rather than deal with anything else. So I think that's part of the reason that this was brought before this board as a text amendment, because that was what at the time staff had said would be the route to go.
I guess what we're saying is that it's not in the code, and that's why a text amendment needs to be added. So, I don't know.
Anything
Chuck
you can add to that, Chuck, or clarification?
I think what I can say to the question is whether, I think to clarify the question, that is rail, could rail be something that is part of light industrial? Is that in a sense the question?
Well, here, from what I can find, the U.S. Department of Commerce's standard industrial classifications have railroads as heavy industrial. So I wanted to know how we're looking at this as heavy industrial. Would be my understanding then.
I think the best way I can answer the question, rather than to debate what that definition is that I have seen rail spurs enter into heavy and light industrial zoned property. So in the sense that it's a spur, it's not a main line. In this case, it's a loop, but I have certainly seen those operate into light industrial parks in the past. So I can only say that they exist in light industrial. There's precedent for that. So the definition may have to do a lot with perhaps the size of trains, the frequency of trains. There could be a lot of different definitions that would be part of that. But I've seen them operate in light industrial zone parcels in terms of not main lines, but spurs coming off the main lines. So I don't know if that's a perfect answer to your question, but I can only go by what I have seen precedent for in other locations.
Okay. Then maybe another question here for anyone with the county. Why is this not permitted in any other zoning district, and why aren't we looking at putting it in any other district? This current parcel we're looking at is flanked on two sides by residential. There's also industrial institutional on the one side. There's agriculture on another. There is the environmental corridor on the other side of it. Seems like to put this right in the middle of all that would mean it's good for any district, basically.
I guess I'm not thoroughly understanding your question, Mr. Larson. If your question is why, if the basis of your question is why put this here, I think this is a piece of property that, like it or not, is zoned already for industrial capabilities.
Light industrial.
So, that's I guess why this particular project or property was targeted. I know Mr. O'Malley had something over here. Go ahead.
I worked 3 years in the railroad, and I built at least 30 spurs. We did one in downtown Winnebago to a plant. We did one also Winnebago to a vault company. We did one in the middle of Rockford down to Charles Street, went behind all the backyards of people. I worked on the one in Loves Park that went all the way up to Dwyer Concrete through everyone's backyard. I worked in so many parts where these are right in the middle of towns. Every place that has either a feed plant, different things, had a spur off the railroad. This loop is just two spurs that connect. This is not you have a railroad there already. You already have the Galena line, which has been there since the a long time. That used to go to the town of Galena. And it's been there for ages. And these spurs have been put off and on. You have spurs in Belvidere that went to the plant right on the river. They went right next to the plant. They brought coal. They brought all the different stuff for the plants there. I worked in all these different spurs. And we had spurs on Lincoln Avenue. We went across Lincoln Avenue. We went into, that's where we used to turn the trains around. When we had trains all over, and spurs were much more common than even are today.
Ms. Kieske, I know you had something.
I think Dr. O'Malley took my words.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I could maybe try
Ms.
and
Smith.
answer Mr. Larson's question, perhaps in the sense of anyone can bring forth a text amendment. So in this case, the applicant's bringing forth the text amendment. It's not coming from the county. If the county desired to put rail, we might, I guess, propose something different or put in multiple categories. But because this text amendment is driven by the applicant, they get to choose what they ask us for. So I guess the question of why it's not being considered in other places, I'm not, but again, I guess just talking about purely the text amendment, asking for it in I-2 is because the applicant has asked. I don't know if that clarifies.
There's I-1.
Or, I'm sorry, I-1.
Ms. Kieske.
Well, I think the answer to follow up with what Tricia is saying is the railroad is there, right? So they wouldn't put it by my house because there's no railroad there. There's no
There's
major
a rail
railroad.
line where vehicles go and do not stop on the track for extended periods of time. That is a totally different animal than a rail yard. We're calling it a loop. This is basically a rail yard, though. People bought into this properties around this, knowing that this rail line was here for a long time. They could have looked at our county code, and they would have never guessed that one day somebody might want to put a rail yard right out their front or back door.
Mr. Ellingson?
I guess when I look at that, and I think it's a question for another day and time maybe, but hearing the things that have been said here in the last 5 minutes, I guess I'm wondering why under special use it couldn't be in almost all of those. I mean, we have it listed just as an I-1 or a light industrial 1, but as we've heard said, it's gone through backyards, it's gone through, all kinds of different places. And I would almost think, as I look at that, as if we're looking at something for special use, there's quite a few of those that would actually fit. Definitely including probably A1 or A2, where they've already attached and gone to other granaries and other elevators across the county at different times. But like I said, I hope that's for another day, another time. But it does make me beg the same question he started with, even though it's changed a bit from then.
Hold that thought just a moment, Mr. Larson. Mr. Noble, I failed to ask you to state your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
Nathan Noble, 504 North State Street, Belvidere, Illinois, 61008, attorney for the applicant.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Larson.
Yes, I'll just keep going on here. There's some basic land planning principles that are commonly accepted and understood across the United States, and they're in many municipal codes. And generally, heavy industrial areas are kept away from residential areas by 2,500 feet. Sometimes it's between 1,000 to 3,000 feet, with a buffer zone between them of open space, light industrial, or commercial uses. And they're also kept away from public schools, libraries, hospitals, and other communities serving uses by a mile. We're putting this would be putting this within, I don't even know if it'd be up to 200 feet. It'd be less than 200 feet of residential areas, institutional areas. Everybody puts a buffer between heavy industrial and residential and institutional. We're choosing not only to put no buffer, we're putting it as close as we possibly can. This just makes absolutely no sense to me. If you look at our light industrial ordinance, it was mentioned here, 3.11. It's meant to be a transitional area between general industrial activities and other less intensive non-industrial uses. We consider heavy industrial as general industrial in our county here. So it looks like we're basically throwing our whole county code's light industrial district out the window, or the industrial intent and purpose and required conditions. They're being thrown out. And even if you look at our general industrial, which we're basically going to have to follow to allow this in there, general industrial district, our code 3.12.1. I won't read it all. One sentence, these activities in these districts require extensive community facilities and reasonable access to arterial thoroughfares. They may have extensive open storage and service areas, generate heavy industrial traffic, which this is going to do. That's why it's considered heavy industrial, and meet lower industrial performance standards than those uses permitted in the light industrial district. It's also supposed to not create nuisances beyond the limitations set in that ordinance. And it is this district for heavy industrial use that we have, it's called our general industrial district, is designed to be isolated from residential and commercial development. We're also throwing out our general industrial district code. This makes absolutely no sense how we're even at this point to throw everything we have out. The ideal location, Mr. Ellingson said, it'd be an A1, away from the districts that heavy industrial uses are supposed to be kept away from. The one gentleman mentioned blight district. That's basically what a general industrial district is. It's a blight district. It's not supposed to be anywhere near residential, anywhere near institutional. I'll put forth the motion to amend this to allow it in the A1 district and remove it from the L1.
I1?
I1. Yep.
Okay, so you mean the text amendment?
Yes.
I don't think we can amend it to that degree without having it go back through hearings, ZBA hearings. No one would have noticed that the county was considering putting rail loop in A1. So I don't think that you could amend it in that manner, unless you'd have to send it back.
Yeah. So I guess there's a motion to amend the text amendment to allow it in A1 also?
And not in I1.
And not in I1. Okay, so there's a motion by Mr. Ray Larson to amend the text amendment to be only in A1, not I1. Is there a second? I'll ask again, is there a second for the motion? One last time, is there a second? Motion fails. Mr. Ellingson.
Yeah, I didn't second that because I think it's an improper motion. And I just want to point that out because I think by doing that, we're actually talking about something that we don't even have in front of us. You know, we're looking at a motion, and we're saying, again, that could apply to our table of permitted uses if we wanted to work on that. But to take something that already is listed as a light industrial, I don't think we can simply make that motion to change it, which is what we'd actually have to be doing to pertain to the motion that's on the floor.
Okay. Ms. Kieske.
I'd like to call the question.
Okay. Motion to call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
You should have a second for that. Motion. Yeah. That's good. I think it takes a second, but there's no discussion allowed on it.
No, there's no discussion.
Yeah.
No discussion after
If it, what I've been given says we need a second, so we'll go back. Mr. Ellingson, or Ms. Gieske made a motion to call the question. We'll redo that. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Milner. Any discussion? No, there's no discussion. My bad. Habit. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Sorry about the delay. All right. Roll call, please. This is, for clarification, this is the text amendment to allow the rail use in the I-1 section with special permit, special use, whatever it is. Roll call, please.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
No.
Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson.
Do we now have 9.6, which is a motion to approve ordinance 19-11, case number 21-2018.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Gieske. Sorry, I saw her hand first.
Anyway.
Staff report.
Okay, I think we're all familiar with this special use and the application that's before you. And due to the text amendment, this would then allow the application to occur to have a special use, to have a rail loop. Keep in mind that this is already zoned I-1, and the applicant would like to put in grain storage. Grain storage is a permitted use in I-1. So, but for the rail loop, there wouldn't be any county involvement in the grain storage. It's a permitted use. They could just get that permit and build it. So this special use is pretty, I think people are familiar with it. I would like to point out an item that has to do with what came out of the PZB committee regarding conditions. So I'd like to find that document. What came out of the PZB committee are, of the conditions that are in this document, two conditions. One, condition number 2, which actually came out of the ZBA hearing. So if you look at condition number 2, special use permit is granted for the rail loop line and spur for the use of shuttle trains for transporting goods that facilitate the I-1 classification, including shuttle trains of agricultural products, provided such goods meet federal and state guidelines. So that condition is what came out of the hearing, out of the ZBA hearing. What the PZB committee added was condition 11, that operations at the subject property shall be in substantial conformity with the applicant's narrative and site plan submitted as part of the special use permit. So we analyzed this and tried to wrestle with what appears to be almost an incompatibility with these two. Keep in mind the staff received a site plan, a narrative, a description of what the company would like to do. It was our belief that we could live with this project. We recommended it in favor because we felt it was doing something with the I-1 classification that you see this in I-1 and I-2 as our consultant indicated. But most importantly, we felt that what was presented was also limiting on the intensity of the use. In other words, we felt that what was proposed was really an agribusiness use and not other uses that could grow out of it that would be incompatible. So in order to reconcile this, in working with the state's attorney, it is proposed that we remove Condition 2 and Condition 11 and replace it with a new rewritten Condition 2, which would say operations at the subject property shall be in substantial compliance with the applicant's narrative and site plan submitted as part of the special use permit application, plus the ability to transport goods related to the I-1 classification, provided such goods meet any applicable federal, state, and local laws. So this combined with a letter from the state's attorney to the applicant indicating that future uses that could depart from what has been presented to us could affect the current special use as it is. We believe this provides protection to not have this proposal grow into or morph into a use that creates much greater intensity than what we believe has been represented. I do want to point out that you also have the option to have wording about limiting this to strictly agricultural products on the rail loop. That particular option did come up at PZB, which the motion did not pass. So we believe, given the direction we have, given what came out of ZBA, that the new number 2 condition addresses those concerns, is better written and conforms to what has been represented to us that the owner or that the company would like to do on this property.
Ms. Kieske?
A question, I guess 2 questions. When did the PZB decide that?
Decide which? I'm sorry.
You said the PZB added condition number 11.
Yes, at their
When
last
was that?
at their last meeting when they discussed.
Which was when?
A week ago?
Yeah, January 2nd.
So 1 week ago?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was 2 weeks ago then. The
2 weeks
special
ago.
one, it wasn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
it was 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks ago.
So 2 weeks ago, this was changed, but this project has been in the works for how many months or years? And this just came up? That's kind of a rhetorical question. But my other question is, I have spent a lot of time today trying to figure out what the heck the difference is between them. And I didn't see, I struggled to see how they were conflicting. It didn't make sense to me that they were in conflict with one another. And I guess I'm, probably the only one on the board that feels that way, but it didn't, and it looks to me the new number 2 just takes the original number 2 and 11 and sort of mushes them together.
I guess the way to answer that is that by adding transporting goods that facilitate the I-1 classification, that is not in the site plan or narrative. So by having condition 11, which says that you must substantially be in conformance with the narrative and site plan, then that would preclude transporting goods that facilitate the I-1 classification. Because the site plan and narrative only talk about agricultural products. So I don't think you could have both, because you're saying on one hand you have to stick with your narrative, but on the other hand you could do this. So that's why the new, what we're calling, I guess, new number 2 gives you the option of keeping what was condition 11, basically that they should be in compliance with their site plan and narrative, and then adding the condition of being only to be able to transport goods related to the I-1 classification, provided the goods meet any applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations. So that portion came out of the ZBA. So that's why I guess we reworded it, and because one basically was an addition to the other. And then also they drafted the word facilitate at ZBA, and I think in discussions with myself and our engineer and other staff on this matter, facilitate has a connotation of like growing other things or allowing or helping other things, I guess, along in the process. So we really wanted to narrow that because I believe the intent from the ZBA was that goods that are allowed in I-1 could be transported on the trains, but that didn't want to lead to open it up to having other buildings and other growth on that property in I-1. So we wanted to remove the word facilitate to put it tighter to really capture, I think, what the ZBA intended was, again, goods on the train.
Ms. Gieske?
And I'm curious how the applicant feels about this.
Mr. Noble?
Do I have to say my name again or no?
No, you're all good. We recognize you're still here.
Sure, sure. So how that came about was obviously, Condition 11 was something that did not exist coming before the board the first time before it was sent back through the process. However, it's my understanding that something like a Condition 11 is, normally something that's before the board or that's tied to a lot of special uses. So what my client has said at all the evidentiary processes in the prior hearings is that if someone wants to, if a Chrysler subsidiary or something wants to have a load of engines come in at the same, he doesn't want to be precluded from offloading that and shipping them out. What this restriction, I believe, in the spirit does is say, that's nice, Mr. DeLong, but you have a site plan here that you do not have carte blanche right to just start building warehouses, which are allowed in I-2. And I would say to utilize them, utilize the rail, which is a special use, utilize the rail in connection with those warehouses or whatever, because there wasn't a conceptual plan, as a member of hired staff had noted correctly before. So because what is before you is tied to a narrative, and I would say that in that narrative, in the application, where it asked for a narrative, there was a one-liner that said goods without identifying what quality of goods. However, the narrative that it references does, it only talks about agricultural goods. So in that sense, from a notice standpoint and due process, I don't think my client was being disingenuous as to, just trying to be limited, but then asking the board for something that wasn't part of the application. However, that has been fronted clearly at all the prior hearings that he would like the ability to ship other things if the case came about. Does that mean he can store them there for, well, I don't think so, because that would start to deviate from substantial conformance with his site plan. At some point you've got to have some buildings or some other infrastructure if you start increasing the scope. So I don't know if that answers your question fully, but his position is he would rather not have the restriction, but he understands why the condition came out of the last ZBA.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Malley?
It seems pretty obvious to me. It'd be a simple thing to do. They know when they're going to schedule these trains way in advance. They should notify our 911 board when these trains are going to be blocking the roads so they know which way to get to it. We had that problem in Belvidere for years. You couldn't get to the hospitals on the north side of town. So we put the viaduct in for the underpass. But I think if somehow we could say, if you're going to order your train, let the 911 board know when these are coming, because they're the ones that send the emergency calls. And if they can go down Lawrenceville or go down 20, they'll know which way to get there. It'll be much easier, and it'll help everyone who's concerned about timely care. Just to be a thought.
Ms. Milner?
I'd like to follow up on the doctor's comments, if I could, but I also do have another comment.
Sure.
I would be under the assumption that that our 911 and first responders already have processes in place for dealing with this because they deal with it all the time. So I think that the real person to ask would be the sheriff. You know, how do they respond to these things? How do they deal with this? And I think maybe if he was willing, you know, and that's a big supposition right there, you know, maybe some of the neighbors who have these kinds of concerns. I mean, I live on the south side of downtown Belvidere, and often I am sitting waiting for trains a long time. There's already issues in town of trains. Getting around these trains for our first responders is already an issue. So I'm sure they deal with it. You know, that's their business to deal with those things. But my comments were specifically, I guess, because Mr. Hollander called me out kind of by name, because I had said during the PZB meeting that I had seen no evidence that I could not support any kind of conditions that added a property value concern for the residents around this facility, proposed facility. I could not support that because I had seen no evidence, that no evidence had been given to me that showed that that was an issue. You know, and then you said it. You said a lot of things. You know, you've come and I've heard you speak a couple times, and you're very impassioned, and I have a lot of respect for that. And I have no doubt that you have done a lot of research, but until there is like documentation of where this research comes from, and maybe schedules of the traffic, or how often this, you know what I'm saying, like, or an appraisal of a property near a facility like this, where you can show that it's actually happened. Until then, it's just conjecture, and I can't. Well, I would have loved to have seen any of that entered.
Ms. Miller,
our process is.
Ms. Miller,
Yep.
if I could just interrupt for a moment, I'd ask that you direct your comments
Okay, to the board.
and not to the
Our process,
audience.
We've
please.
talked about it in meetings before, that our process is maybe somewhat confusing. The Regional Planning Commission maybe being the committee that addresses whether it's appropriate. The Zoning Board is maybe more of a hearing institution where people really should speak at that meeting when they have documentation and evidence that they will enter into record. It is more of a hearing than, and then, you know, present those documents to that committee for them to go over for their, to make their rulings, and then they give those documents to the PZB, which then go on to the board. And that's our process. It's not a great process, but that's our process. And so I didn't see any documentation, and that's why I couldn't rule on that, and I don't think any of the other board members were comfortable making that ruling, because I'm just guessing about them, but I'm saying for me, I was not comfortable adding those conditions to this special use because we had no proof that they were necessary. And then because I'm kind of a city kid, and I told you I live in downtown Belvidere, and I moved here from the Chicago area. When I'm looking at the community as a whole, we are an agricultural community. This is an agricultural community, and we're sitting in PZB, and we're sitting in ZBA, and we're sitting at the county board. Everybody is very concerned with maintaining our culture in this community, and the support of agribusiness is foremost. We know that we need to diversify our tax base. We know that we need different forms of revenue so that we can strengthen our schools and our infrastructure, and we can't put all of that burden on property owners, on residential property owners. So we do need to diversify our tax base, but we need to do it in a way that conforms to our culture in this community, and we are an agricultural community. And so supporting agribusiness, as the county administrator said, that this is an agricultural business, and this letter that the state's attorney has drafted saying that they should stay to the spirit of their plan, even though what's already allowed in I-1, they could put anything on this train. You know, I mean, if you read through that, it would be a permitted use in that area. They wouldn't even have to come to us. Those things, and I think nobody's really nailing that down. There are a lot of things that could go on there that are already permitted. But we're talking about them wanting to be a good neighbor.
This isn't a discussion between the board and the audience,
We're talking
please.
about a company that wants to be a good neighbor, and I'm fully in support of this, and I hope that everybody else can see to support this project as well. Thank you.
Please, I'd ask the audience to please be quiet. Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you for allowing me my time.
Thank you. Mr. Hanlon, you moved to the front. Did you have any comments that you wanted to mention?
I just moved to the front so that I could hear a little bit better.
Okay, okay.
As long as I've got the mic, I will advocate for the revised condition to really bring clarity to not expanding this beyond what the site plan and the narrative calls for at this time, as submitted by the applicant.
Okay. For anybody that does not know, Mr. Hanlon is with WBK Engineering, and he is our planning consultant engineering. Mr. Ellingson.
Before we get any further, as we were talking about condition 2 and 11 and combining them into new number 2, we also had a note here about the one exception to that because of the solar project. The discussion is in there, and I thought that better get mentioned in here as we move forward with this motion before we get done.
Yes, Mr. Terranoni, do we need to, is that something we would need to add as an amendment to this original motion?
Yes.
In addition, okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep this on the top of my pile. All right. At this point, is there any other discussion on these options or whatever? If there's no motion, then we'll move forward and leave 2 and 11 in there the way they are. If there's a motion, I'll take it. Mr. Ellingson.
I guess I would move to make the changes that have been noted here, bringing us, eliminating condition number 2 and condition number 11 as they came from PCB, and installing the new number 2 with the words added to it that it shall not apply to ordinance 19-07, the Ogdenville Solar Project.
Can we do this? I think that the Ogden part is a separate one we have to do, right?
Well, but if we're making an amendment, can it be put as part of the
Mr. Terranoni.
amendment?
Yeah, I realize the reason it's confusing is the second item I'm bringing to your attention has to do with Section 2 of the ordinance, not Condition 2. So it's a different part of the ordinance.
Okay,
So
so
it-
you want that as a separate motion?
Separate thing, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
you just go with the first part of that and leave the last sentence out.
So, okay, so the first part of it, I have a motion by Mr. Ellingson to adopt the new number 2 and eliminate original condition 2 and condition 11. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gieske. Any discussion? Mr. Ray Larson.
I motion to amend this new number 2 and terminate it after the words special use application.
So there's a motion to amend the amendment by Mr. Ray Larson that would make the new number 2 read, operations of the subject property shall be in substantial compliance with the applicant's narrative and site plan submitted as part of the special use permit application. It would leave off the last part, talking about other related goods in the I-1 classification. Is there a second? I'll ask once again, is there a second to that motion? One last time, is there a second? Motion fails. Back to the original amendment, which is the new number 2. Mr. Ellingson.
Ken, can you tell us why that last part needed to be on there? I mean, when it was brought forward here as that last amendment, I tend to agree with him, but I didn't want to make it a second because it seemed there was a reason that was worded the way it is.
I think the reason is that it's a combination of 2 and 11 to make them consistent with each other, to honor what the ZBA and PZB were both looking to do, eliminating the word facilitate, which was something that was of concern, and then make them cohesive together, so that they would, they would work together in a proper motion. Any further discussion on the amendment? Roll call, please.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
No.
Jessica Milner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse abstains.
Motion carries. Now, Mr. Ellingson, if you'd like to address your other situation, you could probably do that.
I move just to add, and this goes in section 2, correct? The words that shall not apply to ordinance 19-07, the Ogdenville Solar Project.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Gieske. Discussion. Ken.
Okay. In virtually every special use that I've ever seen, you have what's called Section 2, that all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed insofar as the conflicting portions thereof are concerned. Okay. Our concern is that if we don't address this, if you adopt it as is, you will in effect void out the Ogdenville solar project because it was already approved and it's inside that farmed area where the loop will go. So to avoid any potential of that, I don't think it's your intent. We recommend that we simply add language that this Section 2 shall not apply to Ordinance 1907, which is the Ogdenville solar project. And if we don't do this, you in effect have voided out something you already have done. So, and I just want to point that out, and I'm glad we caught it at the last minute, and the last minute literally was like 5:30 when I typed it, so I wish we had caught it a long time ago. I'm sorry we didn't, but there it is. So.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Kathy Ward. No. Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
No.
Jessica Milner.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Motion carries. So we have 9.6 with 2 amendments to it. Further discussion. Staff, anything further? Any further discussion from the board? Mr. Ray Larson.
Just want a little clarification. So does this special use is granted, it terminates if the applicant sells the property, or it runs with the property still?
The special use goes with the property. All zoning stays with the property, not with the applicant. That's my understanding. However, please correct me if I'm wrong, staff, that should no construction take place or this not be developed within a year, then the special use is null and void. So they get this, and a year from now they haven't done anything, it's done. Am I correct?
That is correct. And then also that whoever would buy the property would have to be subject to the conditions of the special use would be substantial compliance with the site plan and the narrative as presented, as well as the other conditions put on by the board in the special use permit.
Mr. Ellingson?
The other thing I think is applicable there is if it isn't started within a year and they haven't requested an extension, they can get one extension on that.
Correct.
Then it would become null and void. But I don't want to have anybody miss that other part if a request comes in.
Correct. Any further discussion from the board? Any last words from the applicant?
No.
I thought you were going to sing us a song for a moment. Roll call, please.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartell,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
No.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson,
No.
Jessica Mueller,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Motion carries. Let's take a 5-minute break.
I understand. I understand.
I thought you were still on a roll there.
I'm loving the shawl. The shawl. I want a shawl like
You can hurt yourself coming across.
like a big hippie shawl with fringe on it. I need that. It's a good vibe.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Let me see.
This coat looks cozy. I think Carl needs one too.
All right, looks like we're all. Oops, we're waiting for the state's attorney.
Like a Jedi.
Is she standing right out there, Tricia, or is she?
Now we can see who's in the back of the room.
She's coming.
Okay.
Did she take that cue and follow someone out the door?
I think so. I think she said, "Here's my chance to run for it."
So
Oh,
who,
no.
who of us
Oh,
are
she's
stupid
back.
here then?
She's back. Here she comes. Oh, wait a minute.
We call you Bert now?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, right. You know how to clear a room. Thanks, Dave.
Boy, sorry I came up with that.
Oh.
State's attorney slash.
All right, Miss Gieske, are you ready?
Actually, you just woke me up, but yes.
There we go. Finance.
Item 10.1 is a motion to approve claims with the understanding that Carl Johnson abstains from voting on all claims presented by William Charles, and Denny Ellingson abstains from voting on all claims presented by Conserv FS. This was approved in committee at 5-0.
Motion by Ms. Gieske, seconded by Mr. Carlisle. One quick thing I just want to clear up quick for the board. I've heard it from a couple of instances, so I just want to clear it up. On this particular motion, it mentions that I'm abstaining from voting on all items submitted by William Charles. That is because William Charles is one of my customers, or a customer of my company's. Most of the things they would do for the county are not even related to what I do, but they're still one big company. So I want to clear that up. Some people have asked, I didn't think you worked for them. So no, I don't work for them, but they are a customer. So I want to be open and upfront with that. So any discussion on the claims? Roll call. Oops, I'm sorry.
I just
Mr.
want to
O'Malley.
point out, we have $600,000 of items that pertain to Social Security, Medicare, the OACI, and the pensions and all this stuff that don't really show up in any of the budgets of the different departments. That's just in this one. We have another 600 and something thousand of our liability coverage. And then the sheriff's radios have a $57,000 or $67,000 yearly charge, and they still have to pay maintenance, it looks like. Usually when you pay these radio charges, I thought maintenance was covered. I don't know if the sheriff has any information on that.
Sheriff, can you address that at all? Or?
I said when Motorola Solutions gets a yearly charge of $67,000 or $57,000, you still get billed for radio repairs. Doesn't that cover repairs to the radios?
No, it's for us using their service. The maintenance cost, all I do.
Usually you pay 10% of what you paid for the radios every year, and that covers maintenance, I thought.
Yeah, it does.
But they're still billing you for some maintenance, right?
Well, because it doesn't cover, that's for the, my understanding is that's for the main 911 system, it's not for our portable radio.
Oh, okay. Just a few $1,000 to try to keep track of it.
I would agree, Motorola is a total scam and they take advantage of it, but that's still we have to pay.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Sherry Bartell,
Yeah.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Mueller,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes. Ms. Kieske.
Item 10.2 is a motion to approve Resolution 1904, establishing the annual salary of the Supervisor of Assessments.
Motion by Ms. Kieske. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Milner. Discussion. Mr. Larson.
Hey, could we find out why no vote was taken on this in committee? Is it not regular procedure?
I'm not, I think I had to add it to the agenda, so therefore it wasn't published, so therefore you really can't vote on it. That's why, yeah.
You can't vote on it.
Again, if you have an item at a committee level and I ask you to add it to the agenda, but we didn't publish anything, you really shouldn't vote on it at the committee level. And because I learned of this the day of the committee that we had to do this, we couldn't possibly have had it on your published agenda. That's the reason. It's nothing about lack of support for the motion or the position.
But then it can still go on to the county board to us, and it's not a problem. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Any questions? Comments? Queries? Roll call, please.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Mueller.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt.
Yes.
Motion carries. Ms. Kieske, anything else you'd like to share us?
Nope, that's it.
Perfect. Roads, Mr. Ellingson.
I promise we'll be quicker on this set. Number 11.1 is a motion to approve 19-12 and imposing household consumer electronics recycling fees on items delivered at the Boone County Electronics Recycling location.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Mr. Carl Larson. Mr. Newhouse.
At committee, I was sitting out in the audience, and I overheard that today, without any fees, Boone Township is the primary recipient of electronics and garbage being dropped off in our ditches. That would suggest to me that people from McHenry County don't want to take their TVs and litter their ditches, and they don't want to drive all the way to Belvidere to drop it off in the recycling, but my township happens to be the prime spot for extra electronics in the ditches. So I don't know what good it's going to be doing Boone Township to put a $20 fee on items coming from outside of our county when they can't even get there anyhow. So does, I don't know whether the county engineer gets this question or not, but have we done any guesstimating as to whether the fees will encourage people to use our facility, whether it will discourage people to use our facility, or whether it will encourage people to bypass it and throw it in my ditches more?
Well, I think that funding more law enforcement would certainly help that situation, I guess. As far as my involvement with the. I'm sitting back here. You told me to say it. So
Yeah.
But no, to answer your question, I don't think it's going to. It's not. I don't. If someone's going to throw it in the ditch, they're probably going to throw it in the ditch, irregardless, I guess. But what we're seeing though is that in the past, and I shouldn't even say the past, just this past week, we've gotten multiple calls from McHenry County asking if we still take their TVs. And I said, well, we've never taken your TVs. We were never. It's always been publicized, at least since I've been here, that we only take Boone County resident TVs. But that hasn't really been enforced, or we haven't had a really good mechanism to enforce that. So I don't think it's going to change. At least I hope it's not going to change how many TVs end up in our ditch. I guess that's to answer your question. Everyone else in our, I've got a part of the attachment under this item. There's a listing of all the other counties adjacent to us that charge. And last year, Boone County, Winnebago did not charge. DeKalb County and McHenry County both charged last year. So, if we are the sole non-charging county amongst other charging counties, it's very likely that we'll be inundated. In fact, we know that. We've already seen that beginning of January when we didn't have this in place. And so I think if we, right now we get about 250,000 pounds a year. And so we get about just under 10,000 pounds a week. Typically we have a 26-foot box truck that we pack in full week. And I think this is going to help not get that too far out of control. I think if we don't do this, it's going to get worse, and I'm going to have to look for something else to do with the situation.
Are our fees comparable?
Our fees are very comparable. I try to keep them very basic, and quite honestly, we're the only fee structure that's adjacent to us that does not charge for residents. Every other fee structure charges whether you're resident or non-resident on your first TV or your 50th TV. They charge the same amount. The fee structure that I did based on trying to keep them out of the ditches is that each resident, whether, if you're a family of 5, you can, as far as this is written, you can bring in 5 TVs per year. So it's 1 TV per resident per year. And, so the intent of that is not to collect TVs from, and again, this is just for TVs. The other items we collect as many as you want to bring in. But for TVs alone, those are the more expensive items to recycle, and they take up more volume, and there's other issues with those. But so the intent of this fee structure that you have in front of you tonight is not to generate revenue off of our residents. It's to try to curb the TVs that are coming in from outside counties. And as far as I'm concerned, if we don't make any money off this is fine. I don't plan to. The money that we do generate will, like we did last year. Last year we generated just over $5,000. We put that back and we built sheds for the program, and that that was a positive thing. And so I'm anticipating. I try to do some rough numbers. It's really hard to come up with something that, of this nature, but I am anticipating that we'll probably get just under $5,000 from this program based on weights and percentages that I've just kind of picked out of the air that I tried to estimate. But so I would guess that on maximum we'd probably get somewhere maybe $2,000 to $5,000.
Mr. Newhouse.
I hope you're right. Can I make a request of the Roads Committee that an assessment of how this fee structure is working 1 year from now be brought back to the board so I can figure out whether all the extra garbage in my ditches is going to offset the dollars that the county may make from this? Because, Ken always talks about the Great Recession as in 2008. In my mind, the Great Recession was around 79, 80 through 83. And at that point, nobody could feed their dogs. And I got a creek that runs about, a quarter mile south of my house, and everyone was dumping their dog. I was collecting about 2 dogs a week there for a couple of years. And so I understand what it means when people can't afford to do things, and they can't afford to pay a fee, or they choose not to pay a fee. I know right the spot is where they're going to drop their goodies. So I'm anxious about how this will work, and I do want to look at this a year from now.
Mr. Crow?
Generally, like I say, a family of let's say 3 or 4, they're probably, if they can't afford to drop it, they're probably not going to go through 3 or 4 TVs a year for that situation. So, I think that's kind of the thought process that went into that. I'm not going to, if somebody brings in a 5th TV, I'm not going to, it's the intent is not to make money off of any Boone County residents. It's just to curb the outside coming in. We do the same thing with tires. I mean, you go to any any kind of culvert or water crossing, and you go down through there. When I do bridge inspections, I have to take cross sections of the streams every 2 years, and when I do that, I guarantee I'll get a dozen tires. There's tires. That's where the tires end up when they don't want to pay the $10. So the fee is not intended to. And the other thing, back to your request, I collect data. In fact, I've collected the data. That's why I know that 250,000 pounds. Every load that we pick up, I get a receipt of that, and I put that in a spreadsheet. I'm a data junkie, and I love trends and looking at things. So I do have, if you're interested, I have our past, and I will continue to collect the data for our future. So, and just in the first month here, first week of the new year, the Winnebago really publicized their new rates, and that caused our collection on those days to go up. In those first few weeks of January, our collection went up fivefold that we would have expected to see. So I'm very nervous about the situation going forward if we didn't do something like this.
Mr. Newhouse, did you want to maybe give out your address just to make it easier for everybody?
They've all got it. There's a sign.
We do want a new location for our recycling center. So
yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Larson.
Hey, could you tell us, how are you keeping track if somebody is a resident of our county or not, and if they've dropped off one TV already or not, and then you have the last fee, which is a $200 fee when it's closed or unstaffed. How are you monitoring that situation and the other couple institutions?
Okay, so I guess the first thing is how we keep track of everybody. So I have a volunteer that's out there, and I've got the probation people. I've got a spreadsheet set up that we will ask. Generally they, in the past I've asked just verbally, "Are you a resident?" And if they got one TV and they're, sometimes you can tell based on the responses. But going forward here, once we implement this, then I have a spreadsheet with actually a recycled computer from our facility that just has a simple spreadsheet on there. And another quick thing that I mentioned is we're able to give set up Manchester's new office with a computer out of our facility at no charge. I won't get into details, but there's this program we do things to try to minimize cost and maximize benefit. But so when somebody comes to drop a TV off and they're a resident, we ask for an ID, and on the spreadsheet, we're going to track the license plate number, that the vehicle that comes into it, so that number will be on there, their name, and then the street, just the street name, and nothing else, to get it too pinpointed down. But and so I think that's enough to, at least that's my plan going forward. And then your other question is, how do we know when they drop them off? Part of that $5,000 that I collected last year, I've already got it installed, and we already have used it. We've got two cameras out there that are motion detected cameras that are connected to our garage. And right now I can actually bring it up on my phone, and if somebody comes out there, I can watch it and stuff. So we can pick up plates like that, and we put up signage, and so I think just the threat of having that $200 fine out there will, I don't plan to use it a lot, but hopefully the first time that someone does that, hey, this can happen if you ever do this again, and if I catch them again. But our cameras are out there to catch all that stuff, and that was paid for through the first collection process we had.
Mr. Ellingson?
I'm just wondering if this should have an effective starting date on it. And if so, we got to go back to when you would be ready to do that.
I'm ready tomorrow morning.
Okay, well, then it could just be effective immediately on here. So I figured it's probably the sort of thing, too, that'd be good if the press got a hold of it and saw that there is,
Yeah, I did put effective immediately on my email, but.
Oh, okay, right at the end of the sentence. Okay. I guess the other part then is there any way that we can get this to the press? I'm thinking it'd be good to see it in print somewhere. I would expect that'll be probably posted out on the property as well.
Yeah, it'll be posted on the property. I send it out to all the public agencies. I'll send it to the Chamber of Commerce, and they usually put it in some of their, So when we first kind of changed this program about 1.5 years ago, I did that, and I will do that again and spit it out to as many places as I can.
Any further discussion? Dr. O'Malley.
What about if we give them a free cat or dog if they get caught?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson.
11.2 is a motion to approve Resolution 19-03 weight restrictions on the county roads.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carl Larson. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Ellingson.
Yes, sir.
Health and Human Services, no motions, but Mr. Carlisle, anything you need to pass on?
No.
Okay. Admin, Mr. Newhouse.
Chairman, admin has no motions at this time, but could I make a comment?
You certainly may.
Sheriff, you made an amazing statement a few minutes ago, and I'll quote you since it's in the public domain already, and it says, Motorola is a total scam. We are throwing a lot of money at what is now quotably a total scam. Can I get you to come to finance and talk to us about why we are married to it, why we have to stay married to it, and if there's any way around supporting a total scam?
You actually mean admin, not finance.
No, finance. Oh. Absolutely. Well, Madam Chairman, would that be a possibility?
I know a little too much about Motorola. Maybe you don't want to.
Okay, well, admin, I don't care, but that was amazing for a statement that, and we're Motorola customers, so I'm curious.
When you're the only game in town that you get stuff paid.
Competition is good then, or what?
No.
There is no competition.
We got the market on it, we got the equipment, and I shocked in that maintenance is actually 10-year lease to own that equipment.
That's what that is.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with actual repairs. And our system is so ingrained with Motorola that you get to a point where it's cheaper to keep it.
All right, that sounds like your committee statement right there, so I will withdraw my comment.
I've been through it. I can.
Thank you, Marshall.
All right. Public safety, oops, I'm sorry. Ms. Ward, City County, anything?
No motions.
Okay.
No motions.
Mr. Ray Larson, Public Safety.
No motions from public safety.
All right. Special Committee, Community Building.
Yes, we meet again tomorrow night, but we are currently working on a nepotism policy and a harassment policy that we want to make sure is in place. And we also reported at the last meeting that we've got a record number of money coming in this year from all the activities as well as the sales tax. So we are very, very pleased with the financial condition right now.
Wonderful. UCCI, Mr. Terranoni.
UCCI will sponsor another leadership academy this year. I was asked to be back on the faculty, so I'll be one of the presenters at one of the morning sessions. So if you are interested in this leadership academy, please let me know.
Community Action Agency, Ms. Ward.
We meet next week, sir.
Super. 911, Mr. Newhouse.
It is an ongoing discussion and a source of amazement to me on 911 how difficult it is to maintain the employees. We have phenomenal turnover. A couple of months ago, we were fully staffed, and I just breathed a sigh of relief, and it was only for a month. So now some of the discussion on the board this last month was how we might consider some payment changes that would not offend any of the unions, that would also at the same time allow from transfers from other 911 departments to us, rather than going through the effort of training these young ladies, having them put months into it, and then decide, nope, I'm out of here. And so it's a little bit of frustration, but they're talking through some scenarios on how to deal with it.
Super. Any other committees? Scheduling committees. Ms. Gieske.
Fine, and the next Finance Committee is Tuesday, February 12th at 6 p.m. right here.
Mr. Larson.
The next Public Safety Committee meeting will be Monday, February 11th at 6 p.m. in this room.
Mr. Ellingson.
It looks like the next, what were we? Roads Committee meeting should be the 5th of February in this room, and then the PZB meeting should be the 6th.
Are there any ZBA meetings?
We'll let.
Not for January.
Super. Mr. Newhouse.
Admin, Monday, February 11th, 6:45 p.m., this room.
And City County on February 13th at 6 p.m. in this room.
Wonderful. Mr. Carlisle.
Health and Human Services, 6 p.m. It's on the 7th, this room.
Sounds super. Super. Any unfinished? Yeah, what? Ken?
I apologize, I didn't hear what he said.
7th.
No. Remember we talked, we moved it to the 5th at Health at 6:45 on the 5th.
Let's make that change.
Yeah.
Okay. Any unfinished business, Ken? Any new business? Any information?
Please note the Regional Planning Commission workshops that will be held Thursday, January 31st at 6:30 is here at our YMCA. And then please note the letter from the U.S. Marshals. I guess there's something going on at the federal level and we're not going to be paid. Just saying. And then IEPA has approved our permit application to put the solar farm on the landfill. But we're subject to the lottery. So the lottery's been postponed.
Oh, seriously?
So
Till
it's,
when?
it'll be well into February, March before you know who's going to win the lottery.
Are they accepting more applications then for an extended period?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Oh.
I just wondered if they did one that very likely could have done both.
Also, we looked at some dates for the board retreat. Saturday, February 23rd seemed like actually the earliest we could actually get it even put together. So that's the date we're putting out there.
If anybody has any problems with that date, please let us know as soon as possible. Once again, it typically start 8 o'clock for breakfast and start the meeting at 8:30 and hopefully be out by noon-ish. Yes, Ms. Stapler.
So we have a primary February 26th, which means February 23rd, my office will be open for early voting, just putting that out there from 9 to noon.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay. Okay. Do we need executive session, Ken? I was afraid you were going to say that. I would accept a motion to go into executive.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carlisle, seconded by Mr. O'Malley. Roll call, please.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse, Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Kathy Ward, Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Difficult.
We're good.
Ms. Milner, you were saying? You were saying?
Oh, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Carlisle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.